Welcome to the Select Board meeting for Monday, June 3rd. We'll call to order at 6:32 p.m. Excuse me. First item of business is review of the police department policy draft, traffic control personnel, second read.
I don't know if Chief is coming or not, but I will have.
I don't believe he is, no.
Okay. I do have two notes that could be brought back to him. I just had a chance to go over it early this afternoon, so I haven't had a chance to reach out to him. Under Section 3 duties, the second paragraph, which is just a standalone sentence, TCPs will not be authorized to work any town of Erving projects. So one was, what's the reasoning? And then two, is it all departments, as in highway, water, rec, if we have special functions, which are actually talked about, like parades and things that they would be doing, well, that would be a rec, if it's a parade in town, then it's rec commission, then that's a town of Erving project. So I need some clarity on that.
So the answer to that is overtime. So the opinion that came back from legal counsel when you're using a traffic control beyond the details, if it becomes a town of Erving, say, an employee at a town hall was going to be a traffic control, so that during their day, they already work their 40-hour shift, right? And they are doing details. There's a provision that allows details, which is usually paid at a much higher rate, to be paid out, and it's not overtime eligible. It's a separate rate because you're doing it for a third party.
It's a stipend for a third party.
Right, a utility company, the state, something of that nature. If instead we're doing it for ourselves, it's the town of Erving as the employer having an employee in two different pay groups, two different pay rates, which is not inappropriate. But for that point, you go back to, have you already worked your 40 hours in that given week? If the answer is yes, it's not time and a half on the gross of what was earned for the week. So the concern
So there's
is,
no exemption from them other,
If they're working on a job that is the town of Irving's, because we are de facto the employer of
Right.
the traffic detail as well
right.
as their regular job.
okay.
Or
And so the
assigning-
only ones that can do town details
Would be police.
Police, because they're exempt from that provision.
Right.
Just making sure.
Yep. That was where that's the genesis
So
of that.
then I think the only thing that brings up is, I read somewhere in here, and I didn't make a note of it, and I apologize because it didn't jump out at me until parades and large-scale special events. So I don't know of any parades that we have in town that are not a town sanction and run by the town.
I think he was including it in the
Because
what
it's-
if it was to ever happen, if there was ever an application, you all received a permit, somebody wants to do a special
Okay,
event.
fair enough.
I
enough.
think that's where that was coming from.
So it's more generalized. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So thank you for the clarity on that one under duties. And the only other one I had was under section 6, detail assignment. Second paragraph, second sentence says, see outside or conflicting employment guidelines in the town of Irving, personnel policies and procedures. That doesn't exist. Policies
Third
and
paragraph?
procedures. It's third paragraph, sorry.
Okay.
Last
gotcha.
sentence.
Yep, no, okay.
Not that the personnel policies and procedures doesn't exist. That section does not exist. It exists in various employment contracts, but it is not a section of the personnel manual. So that would need to be adjusted.
Right.
Yeah, and it probably may not, or will not, may
Correct,
not, you know,
yeah,
but that kind
But
of,
referencing it to that document, it's not existent. So even when
Gotcha.
the document goes live on the website, it won't be able to be
cross-reference.
cross-referenced back. So that
So,
one.
but we don't, I mean, do you think we need that? I think we can just strike the second sentence. The first sentence covers it.
Yeah.
right? I mean, it may not interfere with their other primary, their full-time or part-time position.
And for those employees who do have an employment agreement with those provisions, it's already in place.
And that supersedes anyway.
That supersedes this
Right.
anyways,
Right.
because they're.
It's further restricted, yeah, or further, it doesn't allow, this couldn't supersede that.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, just strike it then, the last
So
sentence.
striking it satisfies it.
I
Yeah,
would think.
Okay.
and that's all I had.
Okay. In section 5, this might be a minor thing, and maybe I'm overthinking it, but in the first sentence, we're talking about the type of uniform and certain script being screened on the back, and I'm wondering if printed would be more appropriate over the test of time, because screened isn't always necessarily the best application. There's new technology that I've seen coming out that the ink is actually embedded into the fibers of the fabric, so it wears at the same rate. And there are, I know it references it later with coats for inclement weather and whatnot, and usually those are hot pressed.
I was going to say,
Yes,
instead of
they are.
screen, would you be amenable to affixed?
Well, how about, yeah, or just,
Yeah. Again, I know I'm,
Yeah, yeah. You're limiting if you.
I don't even think you need that word. With this on that. How is not pertinent. A method of print
Correct.
attachment, fixation, right? I would think we can
So
just
if there's
say
a- if there's a
it's shirts
second-
with Erving traffic control on the back.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like
Yeah.
that's almost excessive to say how they're how that's on there, unless there's a specific need.
as long as it's not duct tape.
I mean, I think yeah.
I mean,
Go ahead. I don't
sure.
want to.
Shall appear or affix. I'm amenable either way. I just don't want, not that this would be an egregious policy violation if it was otherwise
Right.
appearing, but
Sure.
Yeah. I think just omitting the word screen works.
and further down, the third paragraph is top of page 3 regarding being provided a police cruiser when available or details require such equipment. I'm not opposed to our town staff utilizing the equipment. I mean, they're professionals and they're trusted with other valuable equipment as well. My concern is, in light of recent events, going back to December when a Waltham officer was targeted on a detail, and recently here in Franklin County, we've had 2 officers targeted. I don't know that if some sort of provision or attention to alertness, that cruisers do draw attention, and I'm more concerned about their safety and that drawing where they might be incorrectly identified as police officers rather than traffic control personnel. And I wish I had a solution or a suggestion, because I hate bringing concerns without, I don't know, if something we could just mull over.
I was going to bring up questioning whether we have that happening, whether we have a law enforcement vehicle being operated and utilized by non-law enforcement personnel, regardless of firearms or ammo. There are other, there's a whole expensive grouping of equipment that those carry for that purpose. And I'm not saying, like you said, that people don't act professionally within them, but I just don't know that we want to create that situation for that individual, for their own safety, not only in that, but just in the unfamiliarity. And there's a variety of, unintended situational things that could be created by someone using that vehicle, even if it's in an official capacity such as this. I mean, civilian flaggers aren't utilizing law enforcement vehicles to do flagging, where they're utilized at other details today. I would think if one is needed, then we should have a law enforcement officer at that detail, as long as there's one there. I pondered it as well. I don't know that that's the right answer, but I don't feel super comfortable with the general idea of it either. And, we don't necessarily have unlimited vehicles that every time someone who is a TCP says, I need to go work a detail and they need a vehicle, right? And it's when required, it says when available or when required, I get that, but
I mean,
you're just opening that up.
yeah, for the most part, any of the Route 2, Route 63 are going to require lights. It's just due to the nature of the vehicle traffic. I'm just wondering, I know other towns do provide, through their traffic control policy, vehicles, but they're older vehicles that are already stripped out and all they have are lights. Then the only other question I have, and I know I brought this up one other time when it relates to police policy, and I apologize, I didn't think of it until just this moment. I think I asked a question, is part of their policy that if it's a marked vehicle, do they have to be armed? And I don't remember the answer, and I know the chief answered that for me.
Yeah, I'd have to look at it. I don't recall either.
And I don't recall. And I know I asked that pointed question when we were reviewing another police policy about do they have to be armed when operating a marked police cruiser? And so can we supersede that? If that is in fact still in the policy, can we supersede that and say that they cannot be armed? You know, you see a lot of details around here. They just use an unmarked vehicle that just doesn't even have to have white and blue. It can have red and orange. It can have any safety lights on it just to show, caution. So just something to think about.
I don't know that we have that today, but at some point in the future, I think that might be, if there's that much of a need, that there aren't sufficient law enforcement personnel who are taking details to have the vehicles present necessary, that we consider having one. But again, we're talking about a problem that's not Erving's,
Well, I mean,
and generating a cost out of it.
correct. And I think the bottom line is if we deem that we don't want them using those vehicles, then and I'm not saying yes or no to that either way right now. That just means they just follow the triage of the decision tree, and they would not be available for that one because a cruiser is required. So they just don't get called for that one, and it moves on the tree down to the local police departments and then the sheriff's department through the information tree of who gets to do that detail. So if it happens to be one of the major ones that requires it, and our policy says that they don't use those vehicles for this reason, then we move on to the next person down the line.
Right.
I'm fine with that until we work, policies are amenable. So as things change, we can always adapt and modify it.
And to your point, I mean, if you drive around, there are plenty of people using vehicles that look to be a personal vehicle that's outfitted with lighting.
Oh, yeah.
That is sufficient. And
More
so
often than not, you see.
we could
people
also include some language that says, upon
it's
the
permissible.
discretion of the chief, and whether or not, if you have a personal vehicle that could suffice, that you wish to use, if they approve it, if, the chief approves it, then so be it.
Yeah.
But, is possibly another kind of piece to that.
So going back to your concern that you had,
And I piggybacked on yours. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt what you were reviewing.
No, it's all, conversations evolve.
well, it's only a second read. We're not approving it tonight. So we have some time to look at that one. That third paragraph, they will be provided a police-issued cruiser. So maybe we can individually look at that language, come back with some alternatives, reach out to the chief, however we see fit to be ready for next week.
Yeah, was there others you had? I think I had one, or I know I had that one, but there might have been others. That was it for you?
Yes, that's it for me, sir.
Okay. Let me go back to, let's see, where was it? Under 300 duties, we talked a little bit in the beginning about that. I did wonder, should we think about, is there a carve out or a caveat if it is a town project and it's needed and it's the The project is under, the department that the project is for has TCPs who may be able to serve in that capacity. I think we've had projects where it's water, wastewater, or highway. It's their project, and they may be on site anyway. And if there is an absolute need, and I know why you're shaking your head, but I'm just asking the question. We need to consider
So-
that. Is that something that we would potentially as a last resort, and what would that mean? It's not simple, but
I've always looked at the traffic control as a separate and secondary duty. It is not the function of any of our departments to do that within their normal operating procedures. I would keep it separate.
okay.
That's my own personal belief on it. I think it should be separate, and that doesn't mean that those same people on, and I'm going to use you, Glenn, because you all have Friday off, on a day off.
On a town project is my question. Sorry. Let me, just in case, reset
Yeah,
that.
no,
It's a town project, at which point we get into that, complexity of it isn't a third party, so it's much more complex. And I don't know the frequency and the need and the likelihood that we don't have it and something doesn't happen because of it. I don't know if that happens. I don't know the world. You guys do.
Situation.
Jobs get done regardless, or do things get canceled?
It depends on the location, depends on, it's a judgment call, the person running the job site, whether or not in conjunction with the chief, can we operate without a detail today because, traffic volume is light, it's a side residential road, we're only going to be taking 2 feet of a 24-foot travel lane, we can cone it off, there's all sorts of issues that can come up that they can still run it without a detail.
So concern that just came to my mind with this is, you have a hypothetical situation where we have, say, a water main break on river.
You got to say it again.
And
On river even.
I'm saying hypothetically, and we needed to do that work immediately, and the position required traffic control. I would like to think that there'd be a provision that should a town employee be available and be the only possible TCP available for that, for us to say no and prevent that work from being completed if there was some sort of provision for, even if, yes, it's on a Friday and that employee has already worked 40 hours and it might trigger time and a half for the gross weekly. If we don't
And
talk
maybe-
about it, it's going to happen.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up, is that kind of thing, right? And maybe the flip side of it is, I'll use fire for an example. If they respond to a scene and traffic needs to be managed, whether there's an officer and it's two directions that need to be managed, or they're the first there, they're going to manage it. They're not a TCP. They're acting in their primary responsibility and managing traffic at the same time. So I would rather go that way and say that as long as that's a non-issue, then if they're there in their primary duty to the town and managing traffic becomes part of what that job requires while they're there on their regular job, then that's what it is, and it's not this, and this does not apply. In your example, there's a break, and there's a few water personnel, a few highway personnel, whoever's there on site.
Sure.
And we need to route traffic. Well, we work on this right now. You go do that. That's a task as water, as highway, as needed until.
But with the scenario you provided with fire, they will manage traffic while the situation is being triaged until such time that
Correct.
law enforcement show up to do that. So I can see your point where if it was an immediate response and water, sewer, or highway were there first and they could manage it until appropriate assets got there to handle it. What if there weren't appropriate assets, and this is now going to turn into an 8-hour for excavation, for isolation, for replacement and repair and whatnot.
I didn't expect that this would end up being done in 3 reads, so
No,
I don't think,
okay.
unless someone has more to add to that, I don't think, I haven't thoughts on
No.
what the answer is, but I do think those are all scenarios that we at least need to contemplate, whether we
Yeah.
end up putting them into a policy or not, or
Food
just
for thought and bring it back.
have some. The other one is there's a reference, and it's under 4, the last sentence, to familiar and abide by police department policies and procedures. All of them? Who's quote unquote policing that and making sure they're aware of them all and trained to them all?
What section again?
4. So the responsibility of all these things is on the TCP, which is fine, but who is confirming it, tracking it, recording it, et
That
cetera?
would be the chief of police.
Right. And is it all policies and procedures of the police department? Because I would think there's a bulk of those that do not apply to someone who's just doing TCP, who's not carrying a firearm, potentially not using force, a vehicle, et cetera, if
Not
that's what we
interacting
determine.
with juveniles in it.
I'm sorry?
Not interacting with juveniles.
Exactly. So maybe some more specificity on what those are that apply as opposed to the general everything. There's a lot there that they have.
I'll ask chief to respond to that.
Okay. And I get the responsibility of providing the proper equipment is the TCP's, but I would think, being that we're defining exactly what it needs to look like, we should also be defining what you buy from where, instead of
talking about uniforms?
how it's supposed to look. Yeah. We're specifying exactly how it's supposed to look. Instead, it should be, you must use approved attire, and you can buy from this. You know what I mean? Within the things that need to be a certain way, if we're talking about printed or, lettered, high-vis, certain type of gear, that seems like it should be very
It's a
specific.
uniform.
It's a uniform.
Okay.
Dark-colored utility pants, okay, fine, but if we're defining a specific type of shirt and jacket and such, then that should be, here's where you get it, you ask for this, because this is what we specify, like any uniform.
That was my understanding of how we're doing this. and
Okay.
I can work with chief to make sure the policy reads to reflect that.
Okay. It just didn't read that way to me.
All right.
And maybe it's just a sentence that says, from the supplier,
The department selected supplier.
defined by, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I didn't have anything else.
Do you want it on your agenda for the 10th?
I'll leave that up to you.
Maybe.
Okay. I'll speak to chief tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, see, there's a variety of things we brought up, so if a little time to ponder those and come back with some ideas would be better, I'm fine leaving it till the 24th, or the
Yeah,
the
24th.
following meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay.
No, yeah, it is the 24th.
No, it is. Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is. Okay. Review of surplus equipment request, ACO vehicle, second read. Questions, comments?
I have no concerns.
It's too bad it's unsafe.
I thought of it with the TCP policy the same day. I was like,
Yeah, I thought of it too, but if it's unsafe, it's unsafe.
All right.
especially since we
concerns.
stripped the blue lighting and everything, so it's pretty appropriate, but yeah.
Yeah.
Review of surplus property, highway department, second read.
No concerns.
No concerns here.
Carry both to next meeting. Please.
No problem.
Review and approval intermunicipal agreement for cooperative public health services.
like any of the Board of Health meetings recently. Have they already addressed this?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
just making
The
sure.
board would like to continue with these services.
Thank you.
And while the agreement isn't super clear, the intention was to start July 1st for a 3-year term through June 30 of 2027.
27?
Yes.
June 30, 2027, correct.
Okay.
That was the intention.
No. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
It does require a select board member to sign off, so I recommended it be the chair, but it could be any of you.
I've read through it. It's, nothing has changed on it as far as I could see, other than dates.
And while the agreement talks about all of the services that they offer, the only one that Erving subscribes to is the nursing services.
Yeah.
Any questions or concerns?
I have no concerns with it. I'll make a motion to renew the intermunicipal agreement between the Town of Erving and the Franklin Regional Council of Governments for the Cooperative Public Health Service for a term of 3 years, and to authorize, pause there, term of 3 years effective July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2027, and to authorize Jacob Smith, Select Board Chair, to execute all necessary agreements.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll have that in the office this week for you to sign.
Okay. Review the police station elementary school security improvement procurement.
It's been a long project in the making.
I will recuse myself, just, we have a full board here, so.
6:59. Jake's recusing himself. So
I'll answer questions, but not.
Got it.
this project is a project that we started approximately 2 years ago, scoping between the IT department and the police department on a new security system and door access system. I think there were a few attempts at maybe being able to fund out of existing appropriations, and then eventually there was the request from IT for a $100,000 appropriation that was approved. As we were working on that scope and selecting equipment and doing site visits, the school's need to increase their security system has also arisen. So there was an opportunity to mobilize for one project and hopefully launch what we hope to be the solution that will be rolled out townwide. So IT has been working diligently with the police department and now the school department. There was a request during the budget season for an additional appropriation of $165,000. The citizens did approve that. So after the hard work with IT and the two departments, we were able to identify a vendor off the MHEC contract. And through a review of that process and both sites, we now have a proposed purchase price of $245,189 with E&E Security out of Canton, Mass. As our vendor. And then there's an enclosed quote and scope of service that we're recommending.
I'll just say I am familiar with the platform that is being brought forward and proposed. They are a very, the product itself is a solid product in the security industry. Very highly regarded. Capabilities are solid. I have, after reading through the proposal and the information from E&E, I have no concerns with this and would be willing to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot in there, and actually, to sum up what you said, that one line, I was happy to see that their labor and material warranty was 1 year, and the equipment itself is a 10-year warranty, which is substantial. So,
There is recurring annual costs on some of the, licensing and support, but
correct. Yeah,
I felt it was pretty minimal for the what you're getting. And we also got independent verification on E&E's, kind of after the install support and,
Right.
1 year guarantee, if you will, being very, diligent and responsive at coming back and making changes and adjustments and things, and that all falling within the kind of the initial engagement.
It's not perceived as a change order or as an additional
Yeah, that's
service.
not like oh, here's a new fee to come out and things like that. This is all part of making sure that that install meets the needs and the expectations. So
I think to the point that Jake just made, as you've done with other town-wide resources, as we've moved into more of a subscription-based model through the IT department, the proposal would be for future years to roll that cost into a shared cost that would be probably borne out of the IT office. So it would necessitate an operating budget adjustment in future years.
Okay.
And then that way, no one department is responsible for that cost because it will be something that will be shared. The platform will be shared amongst everybody as we build out site. At least that's the model that we're intending to move towards. So we were thinking of it much like townwide
generators,
licensing.
or generator, yeah.
So.
Okay. The only question I have, and I read through and I don't have any concerns with the proposal, is how strict are they on their proposal valid until 6/1?
They're not.
Okay.
Well, not in terms of we're meeting. I already spoke
They
to
know that
them.
we weren't meeting until after 6/1.
They
right?
did,
Okay.
yeah,
All right,
and
as
they
long
knew
as
we
they're
were.
aware.
They knew we were bringing the funding requests for the current year to town meeting, but then I didn't put it on that night for the board meeting, so we
Right.
didn't review this. But they'll be here tomorrow actually to do a walkthrough and stuff. So they already know we're assuming we are approving it. Assuming we approve it, they are good and rolling. So
Okay.
they're just waiting for the confirmation. The price is good.
You have any other concerns, Jim? No? Happy with it? Oh, you got your reading glasses on, go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I will make a motion to award the police station and elementary school security system upgrade project to E&E Security of Canton, Massachusetts in the amount of $245,189 and authorize Brian Smith, Town Administrator, to execute all necessary agreements.
I'll second that. You can call it, he's out. He's
Would you call
recused
All in
himself.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. We'll get that out tomorrow.
Thank you, gentlemen. I will rejoin. 7:04. I expect in future years we'll bring proposals to roll that out to other sites, assuming, that we are pleased with and they meet the expectations
Yeah.
to upgrade and or as we, make upgrades in different places to bring them online. Review and issuance of the 13th water commitment for FY24.
And that's right next to you.
Yep. Make a motion to approve the 13th water commitment 2024 in the amount of $40.69 for final charges at 17 Moore Street.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Review of the equipment operator position search recommendation. Come on up. Evening. Feels like deja vu, but in a better way.
It is. So this started, I believe, last fall, October-ish
Yep.
area, somewhere in there. And we were all set to approve it at a select board meeting when there was a few issues that came up that we wanted to put it on hold. So the candidate is still very, very interested and has been in contact with us both through the whole winter, the spring, annual town meeting, and is still very interested. So it was a unanimous recommendation from the screening committee to put Dan Costa forward for this position.
I sat on that committee. I was very pleased with the interview. I think he's going to be a great addition if he accepts the position, if we end up offering it to him, so.
I'm impressed. Still, interested in actively following up, given that we had such a delay on our end. But
Yes,
Yeah,
and that speaks to it too, I think.
it speaks volumes.
very much.
Fortunate.
I don't know that anything has changed. I think we were all pretty close to ready to make
I think the only thing,
a review decision and offer.
the only thing that changed is that we now have the funding.
Yes,
and we didn't before.
we hoped to and didn't, and now do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Only questions I have is, what are we going to fill in the blanks for the probationary period and anticipated start dates?
Anticipated start date would be July 1.
Yeah.
We would do on, not before, is that right?
Yeah,
We
we'll
would,
do
we would
an
probably
on.
modify that to be on July 1, not
Yeah.
before July 1.
Yeah.
Because it's usually, like it says here, usually our draft is on or before. We would just do on. We wouldn't want to do before because the fiscal
We
year.
don't have the funds.
We don't have the funding and all that, so it'd be simpler to just do on. And our standard probationary is 6?
6 months is,
So we had talked about transitioning to a 1-year standard. Right now, wastewater and water is 1 year, police is 1 year.
Okay.
It's not in a policy anywhere, so
That's why it's
still-
blank.
That's why it's
Yeah.
blank.
And I was actually going to bring up that we had that conversation, and I think specifically for highway as well, because the job duties are vastly different from season to season.
Throughout the
A
year.
full year probation makes sense to see a full complement of all of the duties that they would encounter throughout
yeah,
the years.
I'm fine with the year.
Yep, yep, I think that's fair.
And you all changed, in the personnel policy, you changed the benefits used to be coupled to the probationary period. And you
Correct. and that's-
decoupled that.
Now it's just 30 days, I
It's
think.
30 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's no impact there
Right.
if you do 1 year.
And knowing we sometimes are making these appointments with other requirements that must be obtained within that first year, it's another piece of it, making it simple that, in this case, I don't know that he has any that he must obtain.
It's hoisting licenses that we were waiting on.
He
So-
has it.
He's achieved that now?
Has
No, he
sent-
doesn't have it.
Wait.
He,
He has a
they
CDL.
change how you have to do it, so he
Right.
had to do, I think he said a 7-hour course.
Okay.
Before he could test, so he submitted for his test and he was waiting on a date.
Okay. So he's well underway then?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And we added the CPR first aid? Yeah.
That's been added to the job
Two
description.
jobs, yep, so, but just as examples of things that we
Yep.
know sometimes have to be done within the first year, so I think having that year,
Yeah, that makes it much easier
just
for the
generally
department head
everywhere,
to,
it's just
you know-
simpler to say, you have a year to get these done, this is your probationary, and.
Yeah, it fits it all in a year. Should be plenty of time.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or thoughts about it?
None?
Do we still want the 6-month contingency on the hoisting? So, I mean, it sounds like it's a moot point, so.
It sounds like it'll be done pretty soon.
It sounds like it'd be done, but if you want it in there just because we should, then that's fine too.
It should be contingent, whether it's 6 months or the year, it doesn't make any difference to me. It doesn't sound like the time is an issue.
I don't think it is.
Okay, that's fine.
You want it referenced at all, or just?
Should be referenced because it is contingent,
Okay.
so it's still part of what must be done within the probationary period, so we should reference it.
You all ready?
I'm ready when you are.
I'll draft one up.
Fire away.
Make a motion to appoint Daniel Costa to the equipment operator position at a starting pay rate of grade D, step 1, at $27.25. Regularly scheduled for 40 hours a week with a 12-month probationary period, pending a medical screening and query check with a start date on or after July 1, 2024. Further continued employment is contingent upon obtaining the necessary hoisting licenses within the probationary period.
I will second that.
Is that the right rate for FY '25?
Nothing's been adjusted at this point, so yes.
Okay.
As we adjust the table, it'll have to adjust.
Yeah, that's what I'm just thinking of it, because we've been doing those lately, so I was trying to make sure I was on the same page. Okay, no concern. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
We'll get that out tomorrow morning.
Yes, please.
Excellent. Review the proposed change order for Bridge Street and Maple Ave paving project.
I'm going to ask you to pass over that till next meeting, please. Still working with the engineer on pricing.
Okay, so we'll carry that for the 10th. Let us know if we need longer.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Review the police station water heater replacement procurement.
So a few weeks ago, the hot water heater failed at the police station where it slowly started dripping out of the bottom of the tank, and then that drip progressively got worse. Made it into the weight room where we had to peel up all the mats, wet vac, and dry. That's all been done. So we had a couple quotes from Jamrog HVAC that does all that in town. The first one was a direct replacement on the same size. And I tried to get it, was 11,000 and change, almost
yeah.
$12,000. And that was for a 100-gallon, 75-gallon water tank. Looked into a few different options. I looked into a tankless one, which was gonna cost more in plumbing and to retrofit the area for that than it is just to go to another oil-fired one. And this is proposed for a 50-gallon, which I believe is more than sufficient for what's in the use of a hot water in the building. Even if both showers are running, all the sinks are running. It's about this, that's the same size as what was put in the elementary school, where they had a 100-gallon initially at the elementary school. So this one's $9,285. Install, dismantle.
What's the timeline for the work? It sounds like they got it in stock.
Sounds like it'd be fairly quick.
That's fairly big.
In case you need it, I'll let you know.
I was gonna say, the Bach
Just
water
like it was
heaters and the
quick.
Beckett burners are,
They said equipment in stock, so I
yeah,
figured
everybody-
hopefully it'd be
they're
quick.
always in stock. They're one of the,
Yeah, he'd be ready to go as soon as we tell him yes.
yeah.
Okay. I know it impacts our ability to operate. It impacts our ability to operate in certain ways at the police department.
Yes, without
Until
having
it's,
hot water.
until it's without
Yeah,
hot water, right?
absolutely.
So that's why I asked about timing, just
Yep.
that it's going to be quick.
Yep.
We would fund this from town buildings,
Yes.
and there is funding. Questions, concerns?
None?
I'll make a motion to award the procurement for new water heater at the police station to Jamrog HVAC of Turnus Falls, Massachusetts, in the amount of $9,285, and to authorize Brian Smith, town administrator, to execute all necessary agreements.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll send it out tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Review of the request from Wendell for support of the Farley Bridge grant application. So, a little background. We have been working with Wendell on the Farley Bridge, and they had, the engineering firm's gonna escape me.
Gil?
Gill, thank you. Like it's a local, it's a town. Gill Engineering, working on that and developed a proposal, and it sounds like they've already talked with some of the state grant organizations, and were recommended to target a specific one through for the MassWorks Infrastructure Program grant. And so they were reviewing this, I think tonight as well, and wanted to make sure we were aware, and also, had been given the advice that if it was a multi-community project and, both were in support, that helps their grant application. And knowing we had urged them to kind of take the lead on this, because we've got a lot of our own projects and have worked on it a lot of times along the way on our, to help them out. So I was excited to hear about it and wanted to bring it in front of us. I think we would be in support, but I wanted to have you all a chance to review it. I don't know how much you've been involved, Glenn, or aware of kind of what they're thinking
Met
about.
the engineer down there on the initial site visit for him to look at the bridge, the decking and the planking underneath, where a lot of the planking underneath is bad also. It's not just the decking on top, where we thought that this would be a good time while Bridge Street was shut down for both towns to partner up and just to redeck it. And then along further investigation on it, a lot of the planking underneath is failing also. Not to the point where anybody's saying to close it,
Right.
but it's a watchful eye.
It's probably too soon to know. But most likely this isn't going to progress at a rate that's going to have anybody out there before we're done.
I don't believe
No,
so.
I don't think so.
Usually
would
Mass
assume
Works
not.
is awarded in late summer, early fall.
Yeah, okay. All right,
Be a future
at which
project.
point it's probably a spring. Potentially, something like that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and the ongoing upkeep on the deckings is still happening per the agreement between Wendell and Erving.
Yep.
So, yeah. All right. I don't have
In
any
favor
concern.
of letter of support?
Yes.
Other changes you'd like to make to the draft?
Read it one more time.
Those dollar amounts are pulled from the grant application
Right.
budget that Wendell is submitting.
Just for clarification for those who might be watching or listening from home, this is a 187,000 in repair that our portion will end up being 15,000 and change for.
Right.
So we're getting a lot of bang for our buck.
And I think some of that may be in-kind services too, along the way, not necessarily funding, so if I read correctly, depending on what's needed.
Yeah, I'm good with it. Thank you for drafting that.
Okay, I'm good.
Sounds like a good deal.
I agree.
So I can put that into final form after this meeting and get your signatures and send it over to Wendell to submit with the application.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, guys. All right, and then discussion regarding schedule for a special town meeting. So we have the town code bylaws.
Right.
We have the senior citizen work-off program bylaw, which is probably the more time-sensitive one.
Right.
And relocation of care drive.
Correct.
There's been a few other things kind of floating out there, but that's what we have right now.
Correct.
And so the town clerk is holding informational sessions on the town code for the 26th and the 10th of July.
Correct. 26th of June, 10th of July, correct?
Yep. And then, so somewhere after that. Are these are informational, not likely to change anything? More of explaining what it is, and that's that?
Yeah, and I'll send back to all of you, and I'm assuming you're going to want the draft on the website, so I'm going to start launching a page for all of that. The red line version's available of what was changed, but if you recall that very lengthy workbook that you worked through over a few meetings with the town clerk, largely were either fixing grammar, changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board, if there was a reference for a fine section to the new fine table in the beginning, it was mostly structure stuff. So there was very little substantive change, though there are many changes, right? So I think the purpose of the information sessions is if folks would like go line by line through those red lines and explain and show where those changes are. The goal with this project, though it's taken 5 years to get here, was to really make sure we had a good foundation, a framework in place, so that all future either bylaw adoptions, changes, revisions, all are built off a solid foundation and organizational structure. So that really has been the focus point. So hopefully, while it can probably feel a little overwhelming to see a document that looks like this, when we really go line by line, there's not going to be anything of substantive change. If through those informational sessions, something truly did come forward and was of concern, I mean, obviously we'll report back to the three of you if anything does come forward from there. But from the several years that we've been spending on this and every board and commission that's gone through their sections and reported back, I have not been informed of anything that was of substance.
So it looks like you're only going to be holding one informational session on June 26th prior to this, because we would be having a special town meeting in June.
You don't have to have it in June.
No, we don't have anything
No,
financially
no.
that is obligated?
All the financial, I mean, we've we've attributed all your free cash, so there's nothing to touch there, and I'm
Okay.
not aware of any other special
Typically, we have
projects.
to cram one in June, but if we don't have to, because we're,
No,
Right.
that's part of why we didn't meet till now, was because we didn't,
Okay.
that was
Right.
not contingent
Fair
on
enough.
June 30,
Right.
so
So this is-
we
this could
could
be
do
a
July,
July-
August,
Okay.
yeah, something
Fair
like
enough.
that.
Fair
Yep.
enough.
I don't think we want to go too far out because of the
No,
work
no,
off,
no,
but
yeah.
but I think, it's a late July, early August, something like that
Yep. Okay.
is very manageable
Absolutely.
for the timing of the articles that are on there.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what the feedback is.
Of course.
You know, I would rather have multiple informational and have lots of dialogue, question and answer, feedback time there than try and do that. We're always obviously going to answer questions at any special or annual to the best of our ability, but it can bog down a meeting if that's where the first time that those questions are being asked and answered.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, and that sort of leads to your next question, and the vendor who's helping us finalize the formatting for a presentation of the town code has some questions for you about how you would like to present them in terms of an article. And there's a few different approaches.
I was going to go back to my previous comment, which actually would inform the answer to this one a little bit. If the feedback is overwhelmingly, we don't have any generalized concerns with this. We might have concerns with one or two items, but by and large, they see a lot of it is just grammatical or formatting or terminology changes, but the content is remaining the same. I would lean towards option one, proposing it just, here's a new entirety of the bylaws. This is the codification process, this is the end result. One vote, one item, no red line, and have that conversation beforehand to answer all of those questions where they can see the red line, they can see all those changes. However, if you've had 1, 2, 3 informational sessions and each time you have new people, new questions, new concerns, and there's still more conversation happening about the changes, then maybe that informs our decision that we would want to. I don't know timeline when we would need to answer that question to ensure that they can give us the product in time.
Right. Fair.
That's, because we can't delay forever and they say, we made our decision, we want to hold our meeting in 14 days.
Right.
Please send it to us.
Don't we already have a redlined? I mean, we have redlined, and they're going to accept redlined and be a
Right.
non-redlined, so I don't know that.
We have the red line. The question is, how do you want the article prepared? So I think if we said
The
we're gonna
vendor
go-
doesn't
the
do
vendor's-
anything
the vendor's
different, the
all
language
set.
is
I
here.
got it.
We're just filling in the blanks.
right,
So it doesn't affect the vendor. All I'm
Okay,
getting at is,
fair enough.
the vendor doesn't have to take action based on our choice here, really,
Got it.
because we have both already.
I would like to see it go as one. I thought early on it was going to be one entirety of, we have a hodgepodge of a ton
We're
of
repealing all this
bylaws.
and adopting this one thing,
Correct.
right? Yeah, and that's
And
what I
here it
thought.
is in totality. If you have concerns with this in its entirety, or any portion thereof, we can discuss those pieces, but we don't need to go through a red line of how we got there.
No, I didn't
It'll
think
do the
drag it
red
out for
line.
another 2 years.
we'll do the red line revisions at reviews.
Those
at
are
the-
Those are,
at the
those are
yeah,
the open
reviews
sessions, right,
at the
yeah.
open discussions. And then when it comes to presenting on a warrant, I would present it as one codified.
Option one,
Option one.
Okay.
That's my preference.
same.
My preference as well.
Okay. I will relay that back to the town clerk and to the vendor so that we can get the draft language ready to go. Again, in the meantime, I'm assuming you want the draft of the town code ready and made available, obviously at town hall, but obviously I'm assuming on the website as well. Okay.
Yeah,
Excellent.
because it'll give people a chance as you guys are, town clerk is posting for these sessions to start reading through and understanding it and looking
Absolutely.
at it. It references May 10th, 2023, so we didn't adopt anything or didn't include anything since then?
Right, as things were approved, he was sending along the new adoptions. What I did tell him was that there was a point in time when we all started adopting things as part of the town code. So when you adopted zoning, for instance, zoning is not going to appear in this warrant article because that was voted separately through the appropriate process. It was adopted as a chapter of the town code. So in theory, it's already part of the town code. It's ready to go. And there were two other bylaws. I think it was the Cemetery Commission and I think Cable Advisory, I think was the two. And you adopted both of those as chapters of the town code. So those do not need to be revisited. So we have done a little bit of that work since June of last year. So I think that's why this is drafted as
A May cutoff.
a May cutoff, because since June, any bylaw work so far we have said are being adopted as chapters of the town code.
Okay.
You also adopted a bylaw that allowed the town clerk to make minor editorial changes and assign chapter and sections. So there's also a little housekeeping work the town clerk is now authorized to do to maintain the town code going forward.
So the readopted in the entirety is everything that we'd already adopted pre-May 10th,
Right,
23.
right,
Cleaned up, codified, organized, consistent language,
right,
but nothing new.
right,
And anything since then has already been adopted as part of the code to come.
right.
And it's just a merging of the documents once
Right.
this happens.
And
Because
once-
those exist.
Once that happens, I assume, I mean, there's the reporting to assume this goes through late July, early August, special town meeting, voters do approve it. We have to submit it to the review of the Attorney General's office. I would assume, though, while we're waiting for that, the assumption is it's going to go forward, we could make the database live. There will be a printed bound copy in Town Hall, but I think the thing that we're all looking forward to is having this online database
Yeah.
that will be accessible not only to town employees, but to the public, where they can look up any of the bylaws and refer to them and print them out.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, it's all searchable with
All
links,
search-
everything,
keywords.
keywords.
Yeah, all the metadata, everything you want to just
Right.
be able to cross-index
So,
however. and-
any resident, any citizen in any area can log in and
Yep.
do a quick search and find what they're looking for.
Right, so I would hope that we could, in very short order after an adoption at town meeting, make that database available pending any feedback from the AG's office.
Okay.
The last one, approval of codification and changes by other legislative bodies.
So that is a format. Oh. So that is when it's talking about the regulations. I can double check with town council how relevant that last section is. So certain boards and commissions have regulatory authority to promulgate regulations after a hearing. So I'll use the Board of Health adopting tobacco regulations. So they have the authority to do that. They can assign a chapter and section structure that matches our town code. And we've created a differentiation between the adopted bylaws and the regulation section in the town code. So the regulations will also become searchable.
Right.
And meta tagged and all of that stuff. So I don't believe there's any need to have the voters further authorize those authorities who already have
They're already
regulations.
authorized by virtue of being in their position.
Agreed. But there may be some towns that
Well-
have a bylaw requirement for something like that to add it to the town code. So let me just double check that piece with town council about whether or not that's necessary. My initial assumption was they already have the authority to promulgate. The idea that they would then need to seek approval to use the same numbering process.
This to me reads like they are approving the renumbering and codification
Right.
of their regulations into the code. Like we are,
Oh,
like
you're
the
saying this
voters
is-
are the general bylaws.
That's not, I now see what you're saying. So instead, that's
Because
actually
it
not.
says they hereby adopts the regulations as codified and renumbered and set forth in said chapters.
That's suggested vote language for the regulatory authorities.
Okay, that makes sense, because
That
that's
makes
how
more
I'm
sense.
reading it.
Yep.
Is it they're okaying their regulations that they have the statutory authority to create have
That
been
makes more sense.
codified.
So that is not part of our articles at all.
That's not a warrant article,
This
that
shouldn't-
would be their
And
individual.
that's why it doesn't say article next to
This
it.
shouldn't say legislative bodies.
Which is why I'm,
This shouldn't say legislative bodies. This should say
Okay.
regulatory bodies.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because a legislative body in a town is town meeting.
Yeah.
which is where the confusion is.
Right.
And
Okay,
it's in
yes.
the warrant section, okay. But that's what the Board of Health and
So this is
others
a notice
would,
to all of them.
would need to also formally
Okay.
Adopt.
adopt
Right.
to ensure that whatever we've codified of theirs.
I was just say post
It's been-
codified. Yeah.
Remember when you readopted the traffic regulations
Yeah.
that you have the authority
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do?
it's
We
that
adopted
kind of
it as
stuff.
a chapter and section. It's ready to go into the town code.
Right.
So
If we hadn't done that, they'd need to do this.
right,
Okay.
To adopt those into the town code.
right,
Basically, it's
Got it.
everything that isn't done by town meeting, already
Right.
done by zoning, or we've already adopted under the code.
right. These will be the final
They just need
pieces.
to know our number and
They
system.
just need to
That's it.
say, our chapter, this is all good.
Correct.
Got it.
Approved.
Okay.
And we'll work with each of those regulatory authorities to do their
Subsection
individual.
of, yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Thank you. Sorry about the confusion on that
No,
one.
I'm glad you
No, I
called
had the
attention
same
to it.
confusion, but I'm reading it like they're doing the same thing town meeting's doing, which is what they are, really,
Right.
effectively. Okay.
Okay.
So all of that to say, we do also need to think about setting a date. Don't have to do it yet, of late July or early August.
I would say, while that's, because I know July becomes sort of this scarcity of individuals because of a whole host of vacations and personal time, are there some dates you want me to float past, like town moderator, town clerk, just to see if any of them could be held on a schedule? Or are there weeks to avoid?
I just looked at my calendar during this, and any of the commitments I have right now are scheduled for weekends, so
Okay.
don't let me get in the way of a good time.
I don't know if
think
this is
you
going to
have
be
some
considered a
later
good time,
August,
but this
mid to
would be
later
nice to
August, is
complete.
that right?
Yeah, my stuff isn't until I'll be out of the area the 16th of August through the 24th of August.
I mean, I think then we're probably talking like, I guess I'm thinking based on the same, kind of direction you were going is how the feedback is will be a little indicative of the timeline,
Yeah.
which won't be till, say, July 10th. So I would lean towards like the 31st, the 7th, the 14th, to put it to the end of July and into the beginning of August. Maybe as 14th as the latest date, not to go later, but somewhere in there.
Okay. All right. Let me float those dates.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Again, it's early. We can change it quite a bit from here to then, but it's a good start.
Yeah, it starts to give us at least some framework to work with.
Yeah.
And if I do learn of the town clerk's office receiving citizen petitions, I'll bring them all to your attention. And I'll double check with department heads if there's anything I've overlooked, but those are the only topics that I'm aware of. In the meantime, there was, on the relocation of care drive conversation, there's a few pieces that you all need to do. The relocation hearing and the order of layout, and the discussion about whether or not you are ready to file the A&R with the planning board. So maybe, if you're open to it, we could have that conversation at your June 10th meeting, and then talk about getting at least those things ready so that you could order the layout and get it ready for, say, July 31st or August 7th, whenever you hold your town meeting.
Works for me. You guys?
Yep.
Yep, no concerns.
Didn't we have a 10th agenda draft in here too? Thought we did. I've lost it.
The June 10th,
Yes.
I don't think I have it in the folder.
Oh, no, we don't. That's right. We just have that. So just as a heads up for our next meeting, so we have reappointments for 25.
Yep.
We have water use rate for 25. We'll have the change order, most likely for Bridge Street and Maple Ave paving. We'll have the poll hearing tomorrow night, 5:30.
Yeah.
That's our only topic. It's not a poll hearing. I'm sorry. Let me rephrase that. We have select board meeting. Our single item is whether or not we want to order the movement of a pole on Bridge Street. For the 10th, also anticipate having a joint with Capital Finance discussing IP mill.
Okay.
Post town meeting. Where are we going? And talking about grants and such towards like the infrastructure for Care Drive as well. So if we're talking about road layout and all that, we'll talk about that as well. Those are what's kind of on the horizon at the moment, along with what we carried from tonight. And also discuss the response from the Union 28 Supervisory Committee and how we wish to respond to that.
It's like a full night.
So we ease into it. Maybe a little busier next meeting, or next week's meeting. Tomorrow night will not be televised. It will be very quick. Most likely, we would just be agreeing to order a movable pole for the Bridge Street reconstruction. So, if you wish to attend, it's open as always. We will be here at 5:30 p.m. But it will be short, I expect. Anything else you guys have on the horizon that we need to think about for the agendas coming up?
No.
That we didn't discuss. We'll probably have the extrication and equipment procurement as well for fire in one of the next two meetings.
Oh, the landscaping IFB will be ready.
Okay. We'll have that as well. And if anything else, obviously comes up for fiscal year, we have one more meeting on the 24th to get anything like that into this year's discussion, this fiscal year discussion. Any moves between departments, budgets, things like that, if we need to move any money, will be in that meeting.
Okay.
All right, that's all I've got. So with that, make a motion to adjourn at 7:38 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.